Welcome back to Poorly Educated Today in the News. And folks, I gotta tell you, the world right now looks like somebody dropped a toolbox into the engine of the global economy and then duct-taped the hood shut and said, well, let's just drive it anyway. Everywhere you look, something's rattling loose. Wars, shutdowns, tariffs, tornadoes, the price of gas acting like it just discovered cocaine. It's the kind of week where you turn on the news thinking maybe you'll hear something normal, like a raccoon stole a hot dog at a baseball game. But instead, it's oil tankers on fire and Congress arguing like two possums fighting over a biscuit. So tonight, we're going to try to make sense of this mess the only way a poorly educated mind can. Slowly, loudly, and with several questionable metaphors. Segment 1. The Strait of Hormuz gas pump panic. Now, the biggest mess happening right now sits right in the Strait of Hormuz, which is basically the world's most important hallway for oil tankers. Iran's out there laying sea mines, launching drones, and turning the shipping lanes into something that looks like Mario Kart, but with missiles. The U.S. Navy has already sunk 16 Iranian mine layers, which is a number that sounds impressive until you remember they keep bringing more. Meanwhile, oil prices just blasted past $100 a barrel, which means somewhere in America, a guy is already yelling at a gas pump like it personally insulted his mother. And here's the thing, folks. When that strait gets blocked, the whole world economy starts wheezing like my Uncle Larry after Thanksgiving dinner. Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei basically came out and said, this is going to be a long war meant to grind down the American economy. That's a bold strategy because the American economy already feels like a washing machine filled with bowling balls right now. The tanker attacks, the refinery strikes. The whole situation is basically geopolitical road rage on the most important energy highway on Earth. But beneath all the explosions and drone footage, there's a simple truth. The modern economy runs on oil the same way a pickup truck runs on gasoline and bad decisions. If that supply gets choked off long enough, the price of everything from groceries to tractor tires starts climbing. And that's how a naval battle 6,000 miles away suddenly shows up in the price of a cheeseburger in Ohio. Segment 2. The Great Homeland Security Paycheck Disappearance. Now, while all that global chaos is happening overseas, back here in the United States, the Department of Homeland Security has been shut down for 27 days. That means TSA agents are about to miss their first full paycheck, which is not exactly what you want when those same agents are responsible for keeping airports running. Turns out if you stop paying people, they eventually stop showing up, which is a management lesson most businesses learned sometime around the invention of money. Already hundreds of TSA workers have quit, and airports are starting to feel the strain. One terminal in Philadelphia straight up shut down a checkpoint because there weren't enough people to run it. Imagine trying to run spring break travel season while the security staff is disappearing faster than beer in a bass fishing tournament. Meanwhile, the BioWatch system that monitors for bioterror threats is offline in dozens of cities, and cybersecurity staff are furloughed. Now here's the funny part. Global entry, the fast lane for rich travelers, magically got restored because it runs on user fees instead of Congress. So the government can't keep the bioterrorism sensors running. But if you've got $120, you can still skip the airport line like a VIP at a nightclub. That's the kind of government efficiency that makes a redneck scratch his head and say, well, dang, we invented first-class national security. But the deeper issue here is that national security agencies don't just pause like a Netflix subscription. Threats don't take a vacation because Congress is arguing. So you've got a moment where the global situation is getting hotter by the day, and the domestic security infrastructure is basically running on fumes and coffee. Segment 3. Tariffs, courts, and the price of everything. Now let's talk about the economy, Because this week the Supreme Court dropped a decision that basically blew up the government's favorite tariff tool. The court ruled the president can't just slap giant tariffs on imports using emergency powers because Congress controls taxes. That sounds like a boring legal detail until you realize tariffs are basically hidden taxes on everything Americans buy. So the administration immediately turned around and used a different law from 1974 to impose a new round of tariffs anyway, 10 to 15% on imported goods across the board. That means everything from electronics to furniture is about to get a little pricier, which is wonderful timing when oil is already expensive and inflation is lurking like a raccoon in the pantry. 24 states already filed lawsuits trying to stop the tariffs. Their argument basically boils down to, hey, you're misreading the law and the math. Which means we're probably headed for another massive courtroom showdown about trade policy. At this point, American economic strategy is starting to look like duct tape repairs on a tractor. Every time something breaks, you slap on another fix and hope the engine keeps running. And the truth underneath all this legal drama is pretty straightforward. Tariffs raise prices. They might help certain industries, but for regular people, they act like a sales tax that nobody voted for. So between oil shocks and tariff fights, the cost of living might start creeping upward again, which is exactly what the Federal Reserve loves to see about as much as a mosquito at a barbecue. Segment 4. Two wars and a waiting Kremlin. While all this is happening, the war in Ukraine is still grinding along, which somehow got overshadowed by the Iran conflict. Russia launched nearly 500 drones and missiles in a massive barrage across Ukraine. That's the kind of number that makes you realize modern warfare is starting to resemble industrial production lines, machines launching machines at cities. But the interesting thing is, Russia seems perfectly content letting the Middle East explode right now. Their logic is simple. If the United States is busy dealing with Iran and protecting oil routes, that's fewer resources flowing to Ukraine. It's like two rival farmers noticing the neighbor's barn caught fire and deciding now might be a good time to expand their own fences. Despite all the destruction, there was one strange bright spot. A prisoner exchange where 300 soldiers on each side got to go home. It's a reminder that even in brutal wars, there are still tiny pockets of diplomacy happening behind the scenes. War is complicated that way. One day missiles are raining down, and the next day buses full of prisoners are crossing a border. But the broader reality is grim. The longer these conflicts drag on, the more they reshape the global economy, military alliances, and political stability. We're watching multiple wars overlap like thunderstorms rolling across the same field. Segment 5. Artificial Intelligence and the Defense Boom. Now, while the world burns and governments argue, Wall Street is over in the corner throwing money at artificial intelligence like a gambler at a slot machine. OpenAI just raised a funding round that pushed its valuation to $840 billion. That's not million, that's billion with a B, which means an AI company is now worth more than entire countries' economies. Meanwhile, defense companies are making record profits because the world suddenly needs a lot more missiles. Lockheed Martin's missile division swung from a massive loss to a huge profit in a single year thanks to demand for systems like Patriot interceptors. Turns out, when global tensions spike, the defense industry starts ringing cash registers like it's Christmas morning. And then you've got companies like SpaceX quietly influencing wars by controlling satellite internet systems like Starlink. In Ukraine, SpaceX literally shut off access to Russian forces by geofencing captured terminals. Think about that for a second. A private tech company flipped a digital switch, and suddenly one side of a battlefield lost communications. That's the new era we're walking into, folks. War used to be controlled entirely by governments and armies. Now, billion-dollar tech firms are sitting right in the middle of the battlefield infrastructure. It's like if the local phone company got to decide which side of the Civil War could use telegraphs. Segment 6, Storms, Tornadoes, and the Planet Getting Weird. Finally, we gotta talk about the weather, because Mother Nature apparently read the news and decided to join the chaos. A major tornado outbreak ripped through Illinois and Indiana, flattening buildings and killing several people. It's early in the season for storms that violent, which has meteorologists raising eyebrows and checking climate charts. Across the world, it's just as strange. Massive floods in Kenya killed dozens of people, and a garbage landfill in Indonesia collapsed after heavy rain, burying workers in a landslide. Meanwhile, scientists reported that Arctic sea ice just hit one of the lowest winter levels ever recorded. Now, I'm no climate scientist, but when tornado season starts early, the Arctic keeps melting, and floods start wiping out cities. It might be time to admit the weather is acting like a drunk raccoon rummaging through the atmosphere. And the really bad timing here is that FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund is running dry during the DHS shutdown. So you've got storms hitting American towns, while the federal disaster response budget is hanging by a thread. That's like discovering your roof leaks during a thunderstorm, while the hardware store is closed. In conclusion, what we're witnessing right now is a stack of global crises all happening at once. War in the Middle East, economic shocks, domestic political paralysis, and a planet that seems increasingly angry at the thermostat setting. It's the kind of moment where history books later say the early 2020s were complicated times. And complicated might be the polite version. Because from where I'm sitting, this whole situation looks less like a stable system and more like a tractor rolling downhill with the brakes cut and 3 raccoons driving.